Yeah? Is this on? Okay. So, here we go. Excellencies, dignitaries, members of the Adaptation Research Alliance, ladies and gentlemen. This is how I opened the high-level launch event of the Adaptation Research Alliance, or ARA, on Science and Innovation Day at COP26 nearly 1 year ago today. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to today's session on the ARA's first year, achievements and plans ahead. My name is Jesse DiMaria-Kinney. I'm the head of the ARA Secretariat, which is hosted by the Cape Town-based South-South North. So a year ago today, I pledged that the ARA would translate the UK's and Canada's funding announcements and commitments into a real paradigm shift that puts those on the front line of climate change at the center of our efforts. At the event, we also received high-level governmental endorsement of the ARA's approach to action-oriented adaptation research, or adaptation research for impact. Today, I'm thrilled to say that the ARA, with and thanks to our members, has continued to grow over the past year in both numbers and collective efforts. Today, we're a truly global coalition of 157 organizations from 52 countries and growing. Our members span the adaptation action and research spectrum, bringing together a transdisciplinary group of actors committed to action-oriented research that supports climate-resilient futures for those most vulnerable to climate change. Our members come from organizations such as United Nations Environmental Program, United Nations Development Program, and the World Resources Institute, as well as the private sector, like GSMA, who's here with us today, and down to local NGOs and grassroots organizations like the Alliance of Indian Waste Pickers, the Green African Youth Organization in Ghana, and Sustentabilidad Sin Fronteras from Argentina. And of course, universities and research institutions and centers from the Global South and the Global North. And you'll hear from some of our members today. Also to note that currently, the balance of our members is split about 50-50 from the Global North and the Global South. I'd also like to recognize and thank the UK's continued funding and support to inclusivity. The ARA and the UK are committed to providing sufficient space for key constituencies, including, but not limited to, Indigenous peoples and youth, to participate and express their priorities and concerns. We're committed to continue working in an inclusive manner to meaningfully acknowledge those voices. And this inclusivity is at the core of the ARA processes on co-creation with our diverse activity areas. You'll hear more about those areas shortly. I would also like to thank the Australian Centre on International Agriculture Research, or ACIR, for their support for the development of our new standalone ARA website at adaptationresearchalliance.org. You can't get it wrong, it's a lot to write. But also the back-end member space that will really allow knowledge exchange and information sharing among members themselves. So again, thank you very much to the UK and Australia and Canada. And of course, thank you very much to the members for the time and commitment to really drive this paradigm shift towards a needs-based, user-centered, and action-oriented adaptation action and research. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to hand over to ARA co-chair and the lead advisor on weather and climate science at the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, Dr. Rosalind West. Rosalind, over to you.
Thank you, Jesse, and it's so great to see so many people here and everyone joining us online. Thank you. You know, it's been a very exciting year since our launch at COP26, and that's really all thanks to the members of the Alliance who've thrown themselves into the wealth of activities that we've had, who've so willingly shared their experiences and so constructively built on the ideas that have been shared through the different workshops, etc., that we've held. It's also thanks to the steering boards. We have some of the members here today who have so generously shared their wisdom and counsel and guided us on the pathway that we've taken over this last year. And then finally, it's really thanks to the Secretariat, Jesse and everyone else back at home have really made this all happen. So, it's really thanks to all of them that this has happened. If we just have a look on the next slide, I think we've got some highlights, the next one after this, that's got some highlights just to share with you. So, the membership has grown to over 157 organisations worldwide. This does make some of our meetings quite challenging on Zoom because some people are having to dial in at different hours of the day and night, but we've made it happen, thanks to people's flexibility and interests. And we've launched the 25 micro grants in a range of different developing countries. They've been really exciting, very effective, and we also at our previous event earlier in the week launched the second round of those Grassroots Action Research micro grants. And the deadline for getting your applications in for that is the 12th of December. So do have a look on our new website, which is adaptationresearchalliance.org, where you can find all the information that you need about that new micro grant opportunity. We've also, been very involved in the UNFCCC engagement. So we've worked with, through our members who've been interested in getting involved in some of the UNFCCC processes that have been happening this year, have worked together on 3 submissions that the ARA has made to the UNFCCC, collating views and bringing those grassroots voices into that very formal process. So that's been the global stocktake submissions and a poster that we had earlier in the week. We also made a submission on the global goal on adaptation and to the loss and damage conference. Another really key area of what the Alliance is doing is really bringing together and sharing learning and tracking learning from the different projects that members are involved with. And over the last year, we set up various tracking, sharing, learning activities for everybody to learn from one another and demonstrate how we're contributing to the mission of the Alliance. And we've had 2 working groups under that have been developing some learning products on that. One is on understanding climate risk, and then the second one is really on the core of what the ARA is about, which is about bridging action research and adaptation action and research. Then the other thing that we did right at the beginning of when we set up the Alliance was to co-develop with all members of the Alliance a set of adaptation research for impact principles, and all members of the Alliance have endorsed these principles and have agreed to put them into use and share their experiences of doing so. And we've already seen a number of different funding calls and processes that have taken those principles right to heart and are already embedding them. So on the next slide, I think we've got some of those programs right here. So at COP26, the UK and Canada launched the £110 million CLARE programme on climate adaptation and resilience research, which has integrated those principles in its investments and in its selection criteria. For instance, we have a selection criteria on southern leadership. We also saw the National Institute for Health and Care Research, 5th Research and Innovation Grant for Global Health Transformation Call to strengthen health service delivery and resilience. And that was launched at our launch event last year, and that also embeds these principles within it. We also held a number of different consultative processes to really understand what are the priorities that the people who are going to benefit from the research, what do they really want to know? And how should their quests for knowledge, how can that be reflected in the research questions that we set? So we undertook several of these consultative processes, and the one that I just wanted to highlight here was one that the BASE initiative ran, which was really looking at what are the challenges of climate evidence for local finance and ensuring that we get more locally led climate finance. And then finally, we also saw innovation funds that were committed from the Global Innovation Fund and from the GSMA, and we're going to hear a bit more about that later. So it's been a very exciting year, and we're really looking forward to what's coming ahead. So I'm going to hand over to Anand, as he's going to take us forward on the vision for the future. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Rosalind. My name is Anand Patwardhan. I am the co-chair of the Adaptation Research Alliance, also a professor at the University of Maryland in the US. So as Rosalind mentioned, the mission of the ARA is to really catalyze action-oriented research, make sure we build the right bridges between research and action, both in terms of new solutions, but also in terms of ensuring that actions are evidence-based and effective. So in some ways, really sort of focusing on that notion of evidence and effectiveness. And as Rosalind said, one of the activities we have done in the past year, which we are going to continue in the next year, are a series of micro-grants. And these micro-grants are really, at the core, you might think of them as a discovery process. How do we discover needs and opportunities that are really based in the context and in the circumstances that vulnerable communities face. So how do we get away from research agendas that are set at, globally at the 30,000 foot level, but really make sure that the kinds of problems that are being addressed, the solutions that are being developed, are constructed in a bottom-up fashion. Right? And so one of the tools for that we have explored are these micro grants, which are really very small grants given to teams of action and research organizations. So we are trying to actually stimulate that process of radical collaboration, of bringing together diverse actors even through these small grants. But it's really a discovery process to figure out what are really the burning issues, what are the needs, what are some of the opportunities. And in fact, some of the micro grants have even taken a next step of forging these collaborations, building trust, and even trying to work towards solutions. So in this past year, we funded 25 micro grants of £10,000 each. These were short duration, rapid turnaround exercises for 3 months to, as I said, unearth knowledge, ideas, and opportunities, engaging local actors, research actors, action organizations, community-based organizations. Next, please. So can we...
Hello, I'm Dr. Renzo Ginto, Director of the Planetary and Global Health Program of the St. Luke's Medical Center College of Medicine in the Philippines. I would like to briefly talk about our project entitled Putting Health at the Heart of Local Climate Adaptation Planning to Maximize Human Well-Being. Climate change is already causing significant negative health impacts in the Philippines due to more frequent and stronger typhoons, hotter temperatures, increasing spread of infectious diseases, among others. Climate change is also testing the capacity of local health systems to respond to people's health needs. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic is further exacerbating the situation, putting health systems under enormous strain. A lack of meaningful collaboration between the health sector and other sectors significantly hinders the ability to develop integrated and innovative climate solutions that protect population health and equip health systems to adequately respond to the climate emergency. Our project entailed a series of co-creation workshops and other activities that engage multi-sector stakeholders from national and local levels, including national government agencies, health sector leaders, relevant professional groups, and civil society organizations. This project hopes to contribute to local climate adaptation by empowering and building the capacity of health system leaders to adapt to climate change, enhancing integration of health considerations in climate adaptation plans and policies, building political and financial support for climate health action, and identifying promising ideas for climate health adaptation that participants of the co-creation process can take forward in future collaborations. This project is just the beginning of bigger initiatives that we hope to pursue in order to protect health in a changing climate in the years to come. We thank the Adaptation Research Alliance for providing generous support for us to jumpstart this important work.
So
Good morning.
we thought it, yeah, please.
From the University of Antananarivo, and our project is entitled Upscaling the Adoption of Climate Smart Agriculture in Madagascar. So Madagascar is one of the world's most vulnerable countries to the effects of climate change. We also have one of the highest rates of forest loss in Africa. Agricultural lands in many parts of the country are severely degraded, and this is because of the widespread use of slash and burn farming practices. Climate smart agriculture can help develop more sustainable agricultural systems, increase farmers' resilience, and deliver co-benefits such as reduced emissions from deforestation. But despite their benefits, the adoption of these more sustainable techniques remains very low in Madagascar. And this is partly due to various sectors and stakeholders working in silos. So this project will aim to bridge these silos by bringing together multiple stakeholders such as farmers, policymakers, conservation practitioners, private sectors, and researchers to co-produce knowledge and evidence-based policy recommendations on the key enablers and barriers to the adoption of climate-smart agriculture, as well as the most effective policy instruments that will encourage their upscaling in Madagascar. Thank you.
As you heard from these two micro-grantees in their own words, so hopefully that gave you a sense of the micro-grants. I think what we have found is that these microgrants have led to an increase in interest. So here's a quote from Guatemala, that interest has been aroused, there is a political willingness, and it is possible to advance in research and the co-creation of proposals, plans, and coordinated actions. You have next slide, please. That the biggest success was the range of stakeholders we were able to reach, the passion with which issues were discussed, and how different interests were managed. Consultations enabled the voice and opinions of minority or often neglected stakeholders in coastal development and management, fishermen and fishmongers to be heard. From Ghana, next please. So the microgrants have been really a rich source of lessons. They have themselves stimulated new activities, as you heard from the Philippines. Clearly, we are seeing this as the start of an ongoing process. And so we're really happy that in that sense, they have been a way not only to discover needs and opportunities, but actually take the next step in trying to exploit them or work on them and build them forward. So some of the lessons that we've learned from this first round, that they enabled communities that otherwise don't have a voice to have a voice. And that voice then feeds into solutions-oriented research. That these microgrants have been instrumental in stimulating new collaborations and relationships between key actors, which otherwise is often very difficult to do. They remain in their silos and don't connect with each other. That microgrants have showed that action stakeholder engagement in research processes is possible and valuable and wanted. So it's not just something that that can't happen, but it can happen and is in fact valuable. And that again, as I said, they have the potential to trigger new opportunities for discovering solutions and scaling them up. Next, please. So we have tried to learn from this process from this first round of microgrants. And as Rosalind said, we have now initiated a second round of microgrants for which the call is open. One of the key lessons that we learned was 3 months is a very short period of time. So we have now extended that time to 6 months. We have also extended the amount to £15,000. We also learned that the initiation of these ideas can actually come from very diverse actors. So ideally, we want these micrograntees to forge collaborations across the research action landscape, but the initiation come from any part of the spectrum. So we're kind of flexible on that front. And that's the kind of lesson we are trying to build in, where we are also now trying to build in a much more active learning process to complement the microgrants themselves, so that even as these grantees work on the microgrants, they can learn from each other, and we can learn from that experience to see where it can go further. Even as we have been doing the microgrants, I think as was mentioned at COP26, we also had a number of innovation funds that were affiliated and associated with the ARA. And they're really critical because, as we know, many solutions will ultimately have to come and reach out through the private sector. And it really raises a fundamental question, which I don't think we have satisfactory answers for, is what does it mean to have viable private sector business models in the context of adaptation and resilience solutions? I think a lot of people are interested in answers to that question. And so we're really happy that we have the GSMA Innovation Fund that, in a sense, has taken the first step towards helping us demonstrate these private sector business models through a series of grants that they have done. And I had the privilege of being associated with that process. So tell you more about it, I'm handing over to Akanksha Sharma from the GSMA. Akanksha.
Thank you, Anand. Am I audible properly? Okay. Is it okay? Okay, so everyone, my name is Akanksha and I lead the Climate Tech program at GSMA Mobile for Development. Thank you, Anand, for an introduction, so to say, about Mobile for Development, but let me tell you a bit more about what we do at the GSMA. We are an association of mobile operators, 700 plus mobile operators globally, and 400 plus companies in the broader mobile ecosystem. The mobile industry was recognized as a breakthrough industry in the UN Race to Zero. That's perhaps because 82% of the industry by revenue disclose their climate impact according to CDP, 62% of the industry, actually 60% of the industry by revenue commit to science-based targets. That is not enough, and the GSMA is working on getting them farther quicker. And that also is talking much about greening the industry itself and its operations. But there's much more that mobile technology or digital technologies bring. A single piece of mobile phone brings financial access, access to health, access to education, access to so much that builds resilience in the poorest of poor communities in low and middle income countries. I forgot to get the slides changed, so can we move on? That's about the GSMA. Next slide, please. So yeah, that's what we try to do at Mobile for Development, and in particular, the Climate Tech program that I work in. We are working with mobile operators to identify how digital technologies and mobile technologies can help in climate action, both on mitigation as well as resilience and adaptation side. We do so through research, cutting-edge research that's looking at the role itself. We interact on the ground with a range of stakeholders, bring private sector, public sector, MNOs, by MNOs I mean mobile operators, startups, small and medium enterprises, all of them together to solve real problems. And a part of doing that is providing catalytic capital to these small and medium enterprises. De-risking innovation is what we try to do. Next slide, please. So, as Anand said, last year at COP26, we announced the GSMA's Innovation Fund on Climate Resilience and Adaptation. This was with the immense support of the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, as well as the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, SIDA. It was a big round. We received 500 plus applications from 70 countries, 78% of them coming from Africa. Huge, huge round, and we have a history of funding innovation funds and supporting them, but this was our biggest round thus far. And just also to say that we are very particular, as Anand was saying, about funding local solutions. We particularly look at the solutions should be coming from the countries where they're implementing it. The founders should be local. The staff that's supporting that organization should be local. And we also try to ensure that there is adequate female representation, because there's no reaching any climate goals if we don't have women leading the race. So that's all what we try to provide from our end. And today I'm here to announce the first, the final cohort of 11 grantees that we've selected after about, I think, 9 to 10 months. So next slide, please. They are all here. You can see they're spread across the globe. I can perhaps start from the left, my left, and your right. The world is round. From Philippines, Comunidad, who are offering early warning systems and weather analytics platforms to local governments to help them plan and prepare for typhoon-related hazards. Then in Nepal, we have GeoKrishi, who are providing mobile and web apps for digital farming content and advisory for smallholder farmers. In Pakistan, we have Bakhawar Kisan. They are installing new weather stations to provide hyper-local nowcasting and forecasting solutions for climate-vulnerable communities in the country. Moving on to Africa, let me start with Liberia, where JPalm are transforming the sustainability of wild palm oil through access to ecological information provided to harvesters, and they're also using mobile blockchain technologies for better traceability of the palm oil value chains. Then Ethiopia, we have Green Agro Lersha, who are providing a one-stop digital service for smallholder farmers. So from advisory to weather information to facilitating access to agri-credit and insurance, they're trying to do it all. We have 3 of them in Nigeria, as you can see here. Koamana, who are providing a digital marketplace connecting farmers to buyers, equipment providers, and information on best practices in financial services. Then we have Crop to Cash, who are connecting farmers to high-yielding, drought-resistant maize seeds, and all of this is being provided via USSD channels. Then we have Hello Tractor, who are doing a fun thing. They are modeling and mapping the demand for farming tractor services to improve planning and preparedness in heavy rainfall areas. A unique use case, I'd say. In East Africa, we have a couple of them focusing at fisheries. Kenya, we have Aquaret, who are using mobile technology and IoT sensors to improve fish farmer productivity and making sure that the aquaculture value chain is improved and they have better market access. And then Simu Solar in Lake Tanzania, who are providing the fishermen with IoT-enabled productivity-enhancing equipment to support livelihoods and respond to weather changes. As we know, in the lake there is dwindling fish stocks, so it's catering to that. We have one more grantee, but I'll invite them a little later because they're based here in Egypt and they're here with us to talk about it. But before I close, I wanted to show you the faces of the change. If you could move to the next slide, please. So it's good to say that GSMA is doing so much, and we are with support from UK government and Swedish government, doing great things. But we are doing nothing in comparison to these people, these faces right here, who stood up, picked up a climate challenge for their country, for their people, and decided to take the risk and bring about the change. Some of them will be successful. Others will fall flat on their face. But if I know anything about innovators, they will pick themselves up and do it yet again and again and again. And they, I think, in spirit, are living the theme that we have for this COP. They are bringing us all together for implementation, not just talk. So I would I would request everyone here to please give them a big round of applause. They're watching you all here. And with that, I'd like to thank the UK government and Swedish government again for funding this. Rasha, if you could come from Benna Foundation and just tell us a little bit about your solution. Thank you, everyone.
Hello everyone. Hi. First, thank you so much for this. I'm going to talk briefly about our project. As you know, in the MENA region, it's suffering from increasing water scarcity due to an exacerbated by climate change. Egypt is not an execution. Also, it's suffering from water scarcity and reduced per capita water share, which is below the water scarcity cell and is expected to reach alarming level by 2025 and 2030. This might accelerate if we account for the dearth impact. Our solution, what we are doing, we are developing and our solution provides a smart, compact, decentralized wastewater treatment unit for reuse in agriculture, because in Egypt, in the rural communities, we face a lot of problem in the irrigation water, and our solution will present a treated wastewater from householders as a safe alternative water source for irrigation in remote rural communities without access to improved sanitation. We believe in Benna Foundation that together we can help to increase the resilience and adaptation of the most vulnerable communities to face the climate change effects. And that's thanks to that's well يعني gave us a very supporting because of the ZSMA Innovation Fund and the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency and the Frisian Commonwealth Development Office. Thank you all, and thanks for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that was really inspiring, and I must say we appreciate, I mean, this is, as Akanksha said, this is truly a living example of implementation and action. Right? So the whole theme of this COP is about implementation. This is really where action is happening, and I think it's really great to see the enormous response, so which is both a signaling of the need for solutions, but also a signaling of the opportunities that are there, where clearly there are individuals, there are groups who are working and trying to figure out solutions and trying to make them work, make them viable and make them work and make them scale. So I really think this presents a really strong opportunity for us to fit into our theme, not just of research, but really moving to action and implementation. So again, want to acknowledge that and thank GSMA. It was a privilege for me to be involved in that process, and I must say all of the projects, including the ones that perhaps didn't get funded, were extremely innovative. There's some really nice ideas here that I hope we can spread out even more. The ARA is trying to operate through three key functions, and Rosalind's presentation gave some idea of advocacy, some of the things we are advocating for through our Adaptation Research for Impact principles, some of what we are trying to achieve through better research planning and coordination through the consultative processes and through the discovery of needs and opportunities. But eventually where we would like to work towards is really mobilizing and catalyzing greater resources for action-oriented research. So one of the goals of the ARA obviously is to scale up that investment in action research, in action-oriented research that works towards solutions. And for that purpose, we are trying to this year focus on a set of new co-creation spaces where we will seek to try and co-create new action research programs. So we are really happy to have 4 of these co-creation spaces that we are working on in this year. We're working, really grateful to have the support and engagement of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and you'll hear more from Jenny Frankel-Reed in just a moment, where we are working with them to develop a co-creation process focused on smallholder agriculture. We are also working with UK's NERC, the UKRI's National Environment Research Council, in partnership, of course, with the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. We are scoping the design of a potential new international collaborative research program focused on nature-based solutions for equitable climate resilience, another important theme around NBS. A particularly important segment for us to work with are, of course, the LDCs, and we have been working with the UN Development Program, UNDP, which is an ARA member, as well as the Least Developed Universities Climate Change Consortium, or LUC, many of which universities are ARA members. We are scoping the design of, again, a potential program that could enable universities in the LDCs to support national adaptation plans. And then finally, we are working in the area of urban resilience, trying to work towards a new program that would focus on strengthening urban resilience, and of which one such initiative, partner initiative that we might work with is the Roof Over Our Heads initiative to seek how we can strengthen work in the area of urban resilience. Really happy to have these 4 co-creation spaces coming up this year, which we hope will lead to new investments and new programs for action-oriented research. And want to acknowledge Sheila Patel, who's also an ARA steering board member, who's one of the moving spirits behind Roof Over Our Heads. So with that, I think this has given you a sense of where our portfolio has been, some of what has been achieved, and really where we see ourselves in the new year coming up through the next round of micro grants as well as these co-creation processes. So to learn more about that, let me hand back to Jesse to take us through the next segment.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Anand, and thank you very much, GSMA, for the excellent news on these innovation grantees. Now, the next segment here is we're moving to hear a little bit more about what this really means in practice. So we have a wonderful panel here, and I'll start on the far end to introduce our panelists here. First is Judy Mumbo, a vector-borne disease epidemiologist and climate change enthusiast. So at Science for Africa, she manages a Pan-African fellowship program that supports African postdoctoral researchers to grow in research leadership in their home countries and conduct research and innovation that addresses African priorities for sustainable development. And Judy also serves on various international scientific and technical advisory capacities, including the World Meteorological Research Board, the co-chair of the COVID task team of the joint WMO and WHO collaborative program, and is on the board of the International Network for Advancing Science and Policy, or INASP. So welcome, Judy. Next along we have, as you heard, Jenny Frankel-Reed from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and Jenny's a senior program officer on climate adaptation with the Agricultural Development Team. And her experience includes adaptation strategy and program management, climate information analysis for vulnerability assessment and planning, and applied research partnerships that bridge disciplines and geographies. Jenny's passionate about co-development in research and technology projects, and inspired by her work within regional organizations around the world and NASA. And she's previously worked with various bilateral multilateral development organizations and provided technical assistance to climate programs in 20 countries and regions across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And next, as I'm introduced earlier today, is Dr. Rosalind West, who is co-chair of the ARA and the lead advisor on weather and climate science at the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. And Rosalind heads the climate science team in the Research and Evidence Division, where she's responsible for the department's portfolio of research programs on adaptation and resilience, including the Future Climate for Africa program. And Rosalind has a background in climate model development with a Doctor of Philosophy and atmospheric physics from the University of Oxford, and is a fellow of the Royal Meteorological Society. So as you can say, I have an impressive panel with me, and thank you all for joining. What I'd really like to do is have a few questions to each. I think this first one will go to Rosalind and then maybe Judy. But new programs are being developed all the time. So from what you've heard about the ARA so far, and of course what you know about the ARA, what difference can ARA approaches make?
Thanks so much, Jesse. Well, effective adaptation really requires needs-driven, action-oriented research that is a collaborative effort, between all the people who understand different aspects of the problem. So that's, vulnerable communities, it's city officials, it's climate scientists, it's economists and practitioners. And when we design research programs, like we've had the opportunity to do recently with the CLARE program, myself and colleagues in the UK, with colleagues in Canada, we've got the opportunity, and I would say the responsibility, to do that in a way that encourages and supports the changes that we want to see in the research landscape towards this type of much more collaborative, much more transdisciplinary, much more impact-driven research. So that's exactly what we've tried to do with the CLARE program, which is really aiming to enable socially inclusive and sustainable action to build resilience to climate change and natural hazards, linking up short and long-term issues, providing a much better understanding of climate risks, supporting early action, and also enabling long-term development under a changing climate. And you were mentioning earlier about the ARA approaches. So we really took to heart the research for impact principles, and we've embedded them in the core of the CLARE program. We've made it action focused from the start. We've really targeted 5 million people over 5 years. We've designed it to deliver impacts on the ground and have a results framework that actually tries to capture those impacts. We also embedded those principles in the first call for research concept notes and proposals that we held, and in the evaluation criteria which we assess those submissions against. So we've required plans that show how the project's going to put the principles into practice, and then had specific criteria that score that numerically. And we also, made sure that the research is both needs-driven and also that it's Southern-led. So we've required all of that from the outset of the programme. So we launched that call in April. And we had over 1,600 concept notes in response to it, which, myself and colleagues have spent the summer wading through all these brilliant ideas. And actually, about 2/3 of those were led or co-led by Southern organisations. So I think that these approaches are really working. And, that's going to lead to much more impactful research, much more equitable partnerships, and also mutual accountability for the progress of the projects and, what we're able to achieve. So I think, hopefully, that's answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. At least in part. No, no, excellent answer. And what about you, Judy? I mean, Judy, you're, Rosalind mentioned Southern leadership. You're obviously a Southern leader. You know the African context as well as the global context. But what does this really mean to you?
Thank you very much for your question, Jesse. Southern leadership, there's not political. I really believe in the Southern leadership in science. I think we often think about grassroots as people who are waiting to receive something. And we forget that there are grassroots scientists as well, as you can see from the range of science that came out of the microgrant process. For us, I work with an organization that it's called the Science for Africa Foundation, that is really very much about leadership of science and research coming out of the continent. There are grassroots leaders in research as well. And these are the ones who come up with those solutions. And it may seem intuitive to think what you need to do to find out what somebody needs. You just need to go and ask them, really. Ask them, what do you need and how do you think we can solve this? And really, that means bringing grassroots away from just seeing them as people receiving the results of research, but actually the ones that are generating the research. The ARA has been great this past year in connecting people, connecting the South to South. These networks were not there before. I can't think of a time that Africa really connected with the Philippines or Southeast Asia in an equal partnership in the way that the ARA has been able to make that possible. And these conversations are really what start the engine for research to happen where the priorities lie. We must see priorities as something that must be generated where the problems begin. And I think every region is different, every continent, south and north, is different, and even within countries there are differences and needs right at the point where the problems are. And I think this is where we really must continue bringing people in to that research to bring their own solutions. So, for us it's been a year of learning for our organization, to the point where now we have adopted the principles of the ARA into our strategy for climate change and the research that we'll be supporting around adaptation, because we have seen the importance of doing it the right way.
Wow, thank you very much for that, Judy. Speaking really to leadership at all levels from the ground up and the networking aspect. Excellent. So, Jenny, if I can just move to you here. As Anand mentioned, thanks to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation support, we're looking at a new program potentially here on action-oriented research for smallholder agriculture. But really, what is it that brought you to engage in these conversations about co-creating a program with the ARA?
We're really excited to be working on this in the coming year. Earlier this week, you may have heard that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation made a large commitment to adaptation for smallholder agriculture, $1.4 billion over the next 4 years. That includes a lot of the work that we already have a track record on in R&D, country systems, around delivery, as well as advocacy and leadership from the continents that are most affected by climate change. But across all of those pillars of the work that we aim to do is action research and how to really accelerate what we either know are promising solutions that have not been sufficiently delivered, or where we don't know what solutions are appropriate to new challenges. So no researcher sets out to do research that is not useful. And no resource manager or planner sets out to do an adaptation plan or an adaptation investment that is not robust and evidence-driven. So to me, what's interesting and important about this is that we need to learn more about why those gaps exist and fill them. So do people have the budgets to engage local partners? Do they have the connections and the awareness of who those partners are? Do they know where to go for the information that might be available to them? So there are a lot of things that are not beyond our reach, but no one organization can fill those gaps on their own. So that's why I'm excited about doing a co-creation process and learning about, for smallholder agriculture, which is the area that the Gates Foundation is focused on, how do we fill the gaps in between action and research, and how do we learn from that so that all of the research and action that we do can be empowered by those sort of new ways of doing things.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Well, we look forward to working on that definitely in the coming year, as you said. In fact, you touched on a point here about resources that I wanted to kind of move to the next question to all three. One of the sticking points that we have for adaptation research, for adaptation action, and even the negotiations going on now is about finance. Right? Finance is always one of these challenges, and it's still largely not reaching the local level, or is not at the scale that we want or need it to be. So how do you see new programs coming about that can actually help to fill this gap in this finance area? Maybe can I start with you, Rosalind?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we know that there is a huge demand for finance for adaptation that reaches the local level. And we also know that there's a huge demand for knowledge of how to make effective investments in adaptation. And I think that, research programs really help tackle both of these. The unprecedented response that we received to that first call under the CLARE program really shows us that there is also a really pressing demand for evidence to inform adaptation action, as well as a very strong offer from all of those people who submitted those proposals. So, the other thing is that, us and our partners in Canada, we really know that even with a £110 million research program, that is a drop in the ocean compared to what is needed. And so I think that this is why what we need to do with a program like that is to really seek transformational change that is both sustainable and scalable. And we really need to be looking for those scalable solutions, as well as, value for money, etc., and seeking to make a range of impact across different scales as well. So, at the community level, municipalities, national and regional level, and ensuring that the investments reach the local level. So we've also designed the CLARE program in a way that can incorporate multiple different co-funders. So at the moment, the UK and Canada are co-funding the program, but we really hope that other investors will come along and join us in this. And there's absolutely loads of ideas. We can only fund a tiny fraction of the proposals that we've received. So we're really keen to find some other donors to get involved. So do come and talk to me afterwards if you've got some spare cash. And the knowledge and evidence that's generated by CLARE and by similar research for impact efforts can really strengthen the case for investment in adaptation. I think that's one of the things that research can really offer here. And we hope that that will best inform, how we can use, the millions that are available in climate finance, but also, and at a much greater scale, the trillions that, we societally are investing in general finance in our future, ensure that those investments are climate-proof and that they contribute to, sustainable and equitable development. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Rosalind. I won't go into any thoughts on that. I'll just jump right over Jenny and move down to Judy. But same question.
The same question. So we're talking about grassroots and the fact that people at the grassroots really know what they can do and what their priorities are. And I wonder if there could be a consideration for funding to help those conversations to happen, so that at the grassroots, communities within their context can discuss how to develop programs, an actual program which is a long-term investment to deal with issues that are really very much regional or local, so that we're not funding projects. We're thinking more in the long term, because adaptation is in the long term, to deal with things that, you know, perpetual drought, to deal with variable climate, excuse me, and all these things in a huger framework, so that it's a sustained funding to allow that research to occur in an environment where it can occur, and connect to government, connect to policy, connect to local policy and national policy. And that this program can be designed, it can be designed at the local level. And I think that would really have a greater impact, you know, rather than many projects that are going around and having to be brought together at the end. Rather, let's think about it before we even go for the funding. And as I said before, everything should start with a discussion.
Great, thanks again. I'll refrain from saying anything here, although lots of really provocative suggestions and thoughts. But Jenny, same question, different perspective.
Yeah, I think this point is very, very well taken. You know, two thoughts come to mind. One is that we talk about this finance gap for adaptation generally, but also for this kind of work. And it just makes me think, why are we not looking at adaptation across everything? Then the financing gap becomes much smaller. You know, if everything we're doing is moving in this direction. So we don't have, you know, a dollar to waste on, you know, work in this space that is not embodying these principles and addressing the real climate crisis. I guess so Jesse, your question was about the financing gap for, well, okay, so this is the other thing that came to mind, I remember now, is that I don't think what we want, as you were saying, is project after project. We want to figure out how these ecosystems of actors and institutions and organizations get connected, become, you know, capacitated, whatever they need that they may not have access to currently, so that action research is the norm, and it doesn't take a development project to support it, but all of the work that these organizations are already invested in become more closely connected. And where there are gaps, we're going to, you know, hopefully attract as many donors as we can and funders to developing what those country-specific, you know, place-specific solutions really should be that will sustain themselves, so that adaptation is owned and managed locally by the people who are facing it, and at the same time supporting any international partnerships that will have benefits, you know, across borders and boundaries, because we do need each other's technologies, we do need each other's data, we do need each other's learning to do this really effectively.
Great, thanks Jenny, and thanks to all three of you. We are nearly out of time, unfortunately, so I would like to, though, put you on the spot with just one last question, which is just actually asking for one word. And this one word is, what would you like to see of the ARA next year in, again, these approaches, the co-creation of new programs, these networks that we're bringing together? What would you like to see in one word for next year for the ARA? We'll start with Judy.
I was worried you'd do that. I'd like to see action research addressing priorities that have been identified in Africa.
Okay, well, that was much more than one word, but a very good answer. Jenny?
Let's go with learning. Hard to limit myself to one word, but I will stop.
I'd really like to see progress, you know, on all of these challenges that we've set ourselves, and I think we can do it.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much for that. So I mean, as I said, I didn't want to comment on anything that you were saying, but just for me, what I really heard there was demand is definitely there. What we also need is collaborative funding, long-term funding and partnerships. and funding across areas, which leads to these kind of connections and networks. And then I really like the point, which is, again, co-creation at the heart is, as Judy said, it starts with discussions, right? It's really about asking those people who are, the end users of this research. So actually with that, unfortunately, we are out of time. So I would just like to really close by saying that we're looking for another exciting year of ARA activities. And these activities, is really doing it with and for our members and the communities with which they work. And also, of course, with innovation funds, with co-creation spaces, consultative processes, this variety of activities that really kind of complete this adaptation, research for impact approach. And also, I just wanted to close here with the organizers by thanking the UK Pavilion, the UK government, in UKFCDO, of course, for the space to share kind of our reflections from last year and some of our thoughts and ways forward for this year. Thank you, of course, to the panel, and also to Akanksha, who unfortunately had to lead, and Rasha for the presentations. And of course, all of you here today who are with us, and all of our ARA members online as well. So thank you all very much. And just to let you know that actually we will be sticking around here now for maybe a little meet and greet, if you will. There will be a reception that will be happening thanks to REAP, the Responsive Early Action, Early Warning Partnership outside. But we last year developed a statement of intent with REAP, and amongst other areas of potential collaboration, we're invited to their reception. So we're also inviting you to their reception, and don't worry, we have their permission, so say you're with us. But thank you all very much. Have a wonderful rest of your COP, and we look forward to being in touch on the ARA with our activities and your activities. Thank you.